All right, Tonys fans, we may not know when the Tonys are going to be, but we have the nominations. And right here we have some of the foremost experts of the Great White Way. We have Andy Humm, we have David Sheward, we have Brian Lipton, I'm Tom O'Neil. And anyway, who's got some inside scoop on what's actually going to happen, if anything's going to happen?
Well,
what do we know?
I know that Tony voters, of which I am one, and I think Brian is also,
yeah.
We did receive a communication saying where you had to say which shows you had seen of the nominees. There's
Right.
like a portal where you say, yes, I've seen this show, and here's the date I saw it on. And that's the last we've heard.
Exactly. That was the last piece of information the league has publicly communicated to any of us. There hasn't even been the usual, unless David, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony swag yet for Tony voters. I got one thing.
I get one piece of Tony swag.
Probably we got the same one.
I got a nice big book from Moulin Rouge.
Yeah, by the great David Cody. But that was it. So, I mean, I've heard from people who have talked to Charlotte Tate Martin, who's the head of the league, that I think, despite what they originally said about doing it in 2020, they're now thinking more maybe the spring of 2021. I think everything is falling on the fact that we really will not have our next Broadway show till fall of 2021. And I think, Dr. Fauci just said something about that. I think now that everybody agrees on that, there's less of a rush in a way to do this and more time for them. And I'm not necessarily defending how this is going, more time for them to think about the best way they can put on some sort of virtual ceremony. I still think we're going to end up with a virtual ceremony, but I think they're probably trying the best way to figure out how to do that.
Well,
I imagine it's not as simple as it was at the Emmys in a way, and not that was simple, but that wasn't the case of where you had to have the live cast of a show on stage. That's what the Tonys are famous for, having everybody there. So everybody's got other jobs now, presumably or hopefully, and even if they didn't, the costs involved in staging those productions are enormous. Then you get into all those guild problems. So if you try to show clips from anything, you've got to get everybody to sign off on all that. I imagine it's a nightmare.
Yeah,
I guess now that they've made the nominations, it's moot about whether they should even be doing this at all. But that was my feeling in the beginning. Just wait, fold it into the next season. There was so much that didn't open this year.
Except now, I mean, I'm going to disagree, Andy, and Tom knows because I've been through this. The next season will now be fall 2021 to May of 2022, and it's not fair to actually include these 18 shows, a couple of bits way to be forgotten into that season. I think David may agree with me, because we sit on a number of other organizations together. The Tonys should have followed the rule of the New York Drama Critics Circle, the Drama Desk, and every other organization David and I belong to, and Matt, who belongs to these with us.
Matt
should
Windman
have just done it in April or May when the rest of us.
In an undershirt.
That's the
But
way
you made
it been done. Nobody could see the shows. You're not allowed to watch the shows on clips. It should have just been figured out fairly quickly who was an eligible Tony voter and gotten this over with. I realize it's a little harder than, like with the Drama Critics Circle, what are there, 30 of us or something? But even so, it wasn't that
looking
hard.
back at the time, I thought that we were acting very, I thought we might have been rash, but in retrospect, we really made the right move.
Yeah.
To just get it over with and do it. And that was the smart move. Now the Tonys, I feel like, I feel like it's like, what's the point?
Someone at my door. I'll be right back.
The nominees can't take the tension all this time.
They have.
Well, I agree with you, Andy.
They have bigger things to worry about.
You're right. I mean,
well, isn't entertainment all about suspense anyway? So come on, let's yield.
Not this much. And unfortunately, I mean, the Tonys are always, for better and worse, the way to be a big commercial for Broadway. I mean, as much as they are about honoring performers and plays, the ceremony itself is to attract attention to these shows for the rest of the world. But who knows?
These shows aren't coming back.
Right. I don't know if any of these shows, frankly, are coming back. I hope some of them do. And even if they do, it's really way too late to be worrying about that.
I think Brian makes a good point. It sort of highlights that the raison d'etre of the Tony Awards is not to honor the best of the season, but to get asses in the seats.
Right.
The fact that they kept pushing back asses in the seats of the Broadway theaters. And since we can't do that right now, Charlotte St. Martin's, fumbling, not fumbling, but the subtext of what she was saying.
It was fumbling.
Yeah. The subtext of her statement, this interview she gave, I think on Sirius XM radio or something, was that, well, now we know, and it was just after they said that we're pushing back the opening date or the potential opening date to June of 2021. Well, since we're not going to open until June of 2021, there's no rush because if we got the awards now, there's not going to be any impact at the box office because there is no box office. So we're just going to wait and, to make it as close to the time as it possibly, to when the theaters will be open again as possible to get the asses in the seat. And what I would point, also what Brian was saying, I think is interesting, is that the drama desks, the outer critics, New York Drama Critics Circle, the Lortels, the Obies, all just gave them out in a more or less timely fashion. And it highlighted that, we're here just to honor what was the best and to not to be a commercial or a marketing tool.
So and to your point, Andy, to your earlier point, I think every one of those organizations, four of which I do belong to, had the same debate about whether or not we should do it. I mean, there was always a faction of people who agreed with you that we shouldn't do it, and we all agreed at the end that we should.
But Brian, you also take in with a lot of those awards, a lot of off-Broadway. And right. So here's the point. I mean, New York, nobody can even conceive what New York is going to be like. Will tourists ever come back for any, short period of time? Is this the time for the Tonys, which I know it's a Broadway trade show, to reconsider and say theater in New York or theater everywhere, I don't know, but theater, the way the Olivier Awards are done in Britain, and start and change that. So because theater is going to, I mean, who is theater going to be for when it gets started again?
Oh, if you're talking about the eternal debate of whether or not the Tony should include off-Broadway, I always think that's a good thing to reevaluate. And you're right, nobody knows where we're going to end up, and maybe for the next season they will reevaluate it. But the point is, the nominee, I think to Tom's original question, the nominees have been made, they're out now. The real issue is, why are we still dragging our butt?
Right. Yeah. Why?
Actually, just
to get asses in the seats.
Right.
Of course, and that's shameful because and the reason it's shameful is we know that very often, as we say among us pundits, that it's important to win that Tony Award for Best Musical, let's say, because now that virtually guarantees it's going to get a road show.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, for commercial. And I think to the point earlier, I think a lot of them, I mean, Moulin Rouge will, as far as I know, Moulin Rouge, Jagged Little Pill, the Tina Turner musical, from what I understand, they have the capital. They will reopen at some point.
I think of those, only Moulin Rouge is a lock to come back. I could very much see the other two just not happening. It's possible, but the investors, even if they have the capital, they might just decide to cut their losses. And it could very much depend on what opens first, and then them gauging, okay, is it worth it for us to do this? And an issue that hasn't really been explored is not just the capital, but are these investors going to be able to get insurance for their shows? And if they
can't, two lawyers in the room, Tom, it's dangerous.
Yeah, if they can't get insurance, then they're certainly not going to do it until there's a vaccine and virtually everyone, because they would never have done it before. I remember talking to Jason Baruch, who's a pretty well-known theater attorney, and he basically told me months and months ago that nothing was happening until after there was a vaccine. So if they can't get insurance, that's gonna a lot of people, I would imagine that the only shows that are going to come back are those that are totally commercially secure.
And on top of that, I think it really goes to Andy's point, to your point, Matt, about who's the audience going to be when we come back.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you, Andy. I don't think the tourists, and from what I've read, and I hate to say it, I don't think there's much of a tourist trade.
Yeah, and like Angela Weber keeps talking about
Broadway shows.
And
Right, I think the next batch of Broadway shows have to be things like that appeal to New Yorkers, or at least
the most surreal
people in the tri-state.
Yeah,
and that's a much smaller audience than it. I mean, before the pandemic, that was a small part of the Broadway audience. Yeah. It's an even smaller part now. So unless you think you're producing something that's a must-see for somebody on the Upper West Side or even New Jersey, and I think this goes to Matt's point, and the prices probably, sadly, aren't going to change. I don't really see Broadway like being so generous and, starting to sell their tickets for $49. I think we're going to see a very different landscape. So I'm not sure which of these will come back. Although I will agree with you, David, that Moulin Rouge seems to be the one that I would most bet my money on.
Do you think that there could be in terms of contract renegotiations, like a strike or lockout before things get back?
You mean safety issues or?
No, I mean them. And Charlotte hinted at this in one of her interviews, is that they expect contract renegotiations the same way that the Met is seeking contract renegotiations. As if to say, all right, now, like it's safe enough to go back, but we don't expect, because we expect that all these shows are going to run for a while at losses. We need, like the contracts to be renegotiated to remove 30%.
Well, the city is renegotiating all its contracts with its unions. It has to. I mean, because there's no money.
Yeah, but I don't really see Actors Equity, the Musicians Union, all of them, so then that could leave it at an impasse where they refuse to do it.
Well, maybe.
Well, that is an issue.
One other thing that I think was interesting that I read about was about the European market and the fact that the United States is now this boiling cauldron of COVID, and the vaccine will be coming, and it will bring us down. But this study was saying that European tourism may not come back to the United States to where it was before until 2025, something like that, which is a big chunk of the Broadway audience.
So then, because I wonder, could there be enough of a New York audience to, I mean, if the shows, if they create shows to appeal to New Yorkers, will they come back?
If you give us if you give us things that, that's what when was the last time Broadway was for New Yorkers? I mean, they used to, come on, Eugene O'Neill and all these, and Tennessee Williams and all these playwrights. I mean,
but it's an audience that has felt unwelcome there. So it's like, okay, now we need you, so come back and we'll do, we won't do Escape to Margaritaville now. We'll do,
True, but
I got a free margarita at that show, so that put me in the right mood.
I got more than one free margarita at that show, and I still didn't like it.
Yeah, me too. I have to wonder also if Broadway and theater in general, immediately after this, is going to have to rethink what its age demographic is. Because even with vaccines and everything, I do think the traditionally much older audience will be still reluctant, perhaps.
Yes.
I mean, look, I'm not a kid. None of us here, except for Matt, is a kid. But I mean, I don't think
not anymore. Maybe once.
Yeah, but you're not in the dangerous class. I know how old David is. I'm not totally sure how old Andy is, but we're all still in that iffy class where our doctors are much happier we don't go out. Even after everything's over, I think that's the demographic least likely to come back to the theater. And they're the ones who've been filling the asses in the seats. So do we start to need to really produce things for the younger people, make it affordable somehow, and hope that they come, which is why something like Moulin Rouge, which I think far more appeals to them.
Actually,
or any of those musicals.
Six is the show. Six is the show. Six.
Absolutely.
Well, I didn't. That was the last show.
Yeah,
I saw.
I didn't like it either, but that's the ideal for, you know,
I didn't
that
love it either.
young girl demographic, and it's cheap, which is
Yeah.
why I think
Always
that
been
could be
fun.
the first show to come back.
Although
if not Hamilton.
in my unpublished review, I urged it to move to New World Stages. Just so you
Yeah, but I heard that it's touring.
I
That,
did write that.
they are planning to do it in England, I think, again. And
The English love that stuff, but it's about their royal family, and
Yeah.
we could do a whole hour-long debate, or I could, about how little the English know about musical theater. I actually started a book about that, which is basically, please stay away.
but it's in. Well, I wonder.
But
if
Matt is right. I mean, the screaming young girls at 6.
and
No, now that I think about it,
have the money to go back.
it's actually surprising that Netflix didn't grab it up, especially with the Queen.
well,
Or the Crown. I
they
keep
did
calling the
Diana.
Crown the Queen.
Whatever.
They are doing Diana. They filmed,
Yes.
they filmed it in the empty theater.
They did it.
All right,
It-
now
it did
people
weeks
tuned
ago.
in. Are we going to make any predictions at all?
Okay.
Well, that's what I want to know. Of all of us here,
Yes.
reviewing the predictions for Best Musical, David, you are the only one, unless you want to update your predictions or haven't yet, you're the only one who does not say Moulin Rouge for Best Musical.
Oh, really? Am I
You
the
say
only one?
Yeah, you say Jagged Little Pill. What are you thinking here?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just.
That's a bad answer, kiddo.
Okay, I'll take it back. Of the nominees, it's Jagged Little Pill, Moulin Rouge, and Tina.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I know you're supposed to vote for you're putting who you think will win, not who you're going to vote for, who you would like to see win. I think that Moulin, that's really interesting. I picked Jagged Little Pill because I think it traditionally it's the kind of show that, I mean, Moulin Rouge is going to be the big box office thing. It's going to do better at the box office in general than Jagged Little Pill. And Jagged Little Pill I think it just edged out Moulin Rouge in the number of nominations.
Yes, we got one more, but that was
They got one more, and
because
I
we
just
nominated the acting categories, and I will not even discuss my objection to that.
I mean, of the nominees, I think it is the best choice, and it has its flaws. I think it appeals, as you were saying, it appeals to a younger audience, so that may be part of it. It's just a gut feeling that Moulin Rouge is just a very pretty nothing.
I mean, it was a hard choice for me, to be honest. It's, first of all, I mean, no disrespect to any of the shows, but it is a lesser of all evil category. It sort of hurts me as a longtime Tony voter and critic to call any of these the best of anything. They are 3 reasonably well-intentioned, if mediocre, musicals. I just feel, and maybe this is through my other pundits, and you can chime in, Andy, I just think the spectacle of Moulin Rouge
Yes.
is what's going to leap it to the top. And Jagged Little Pill, while there was a lot of things I liked about it, there are so many things I didn't really like about it. I mean, I didn't love everything about Moulin Rouge either. As I said, it's all lesser of 2 evils. But I think Jagged Little Pill, for a lot of people, the negatives are just as much as the positives. But I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it came away with it either. But I just think Moulin Rouge is the kind of spectacle we often reward in a best musical category.
But in terms of the out-of-town voters, will Moulin Rouge be harder to mount across the country?
No.
Oh, I mean, they won't be able to spend $26 million on Darren McLean's set, but
This recalls the battle like between Beautiful and A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder.
Right.
And a lot of people thought Beautiful would win. Oh, that's a tour. Everybody knows it. Nobody wants this dark British thing about death, you know. But
Beautiful wasn't really that good to begin with either. So there really wasn't that much enthusiasm for either show. And Gentleman's Guide was really also just a product of the work of O&M in how they managed to market it and, you know, make that show a hit. That was a flop, and it made for a great story.
I mean, I hate to say it, I think if there was one halfway decent really just halfway decent original musical on this list, it would probably win by virtue of that. I think the problem with it is 3 jukebox musicals. No matter how much of a book they've made into Jagged Little Pill, we're not dealing with any original scores for the theater.
Yeah.
And so when you have to decide what's your favorite jukebox musical, it sort of becomes a whole nother level of not only predicting, but voting.
My favorite jukebox musical wasn't even nominated, Bob Dylan.
Well, that's really the unfortunate timing of the pandemic. I think there's no question
too close
in anybody's mind that had they been able to open at a different time or whatever, Girl from the North Country would be a shoo-in.
Okay, so now moving on to best play. 3 of us agree that it's Slave Play, except those naysayers, Andy Humm and David Sheward, who say The Inheritance. So
I would have voted for Inheritance Part 1, and I think they are two separate plays. I mean, the first part was so much better. But I gave Slave Play, 3 chances. I think I saw it in 3 different incarnations, and it just, especially that second half of it, I just couldn't bear. But but it seems to be of the moment, especially with the critics. But if that's the kind of play you're going to reward, and to try to bring people back into the audience, I don't know.
David, what was your reasoning?
I went with Inheritance because it's got all the ingredients for a Tony-winning play. A huge hit in London, all those Olivier Awards. It's in 2 parts. It's saying something significant about the gay moment. And it's got a big gushy tear. I'm sorry, I take that back. It was very moving. The scene where all the AIDS people came in at the end of the first part.
Yes.
And it just ticked all the boxes.
Except the fact, I'm sorry, just with removing this.
And and Slave Play is, I disagree. I thought it did have its flaws, but I thought it was a very interesting, grabby. It sort of grabbed you and made you very uncomfortable. And I think that's what theater should do. It should make you uncomfortable. The Inheritance makes you feel, oh, I'm a good person because I empathize with these people in the play. And but Slave Play is like you in the audience, you're a racist, or you may have racist feelings, and you should look at it. And that was really, really scary. And that type of show does not win a Tony Award.
But it
normally
I would win the Oscar. I mean, 12
no, right.
Slave. I don't think I've met an Oscar voter yet who actually watched it. They voted for it.
Well,
right. Well,
that's a whole separate conversation.
Normally, I might agree with both Mr. Sheward and Mr. Humm, although I had serious problems, especially with Part 2 of The Inheritance. But I think we have to look at our political climate. I mean, everybody knows who reads me or what I thought of Slave Play, and I actually really liked it. But really, in 2021, to vote for The Inheritance is an all-white play, and it got a major amount of, can I say shit on the air, about that. Yes. Slave Play is the most politically correct, politically of the moment play. And you know what? I think that's going to take it. Nobody needs a gay moment in 2020, David. We're done with that. I mean, we're not.
Moment, never
included. The rest, the 3 of us up here are gay, but I mean, that's not really a criteria anymore.
There's always time for a gay moment,
Inheritance, I think Inheritance did have some supporting players who were African American and black.
In very small roles, and believe me, I read so much. I read so much blowback.
You're right.
I was surprised.
Totally right. But it wasn't all white.
I think, but I'm saying, the main characters were all white. And that's, Matthew Lopez is right. I'm not editing anybody's right to write a play. I'm just saying, I think when it comes to voting time, like Tom says with the Oscars, I think a lot of times the most politically correct film has won in recent years. And I kind of think we're going to go that way this time.
Well, I don't know. I don't get as much with the Tonys as with the Oscars. It's a little bit different.
It is a little different. But this year...
Okay. Why is there no disagreement between any of us for Best Musical Actor and Actress? We're all picking What's that?
I said there's just one nominee for Best Musical
There is just one nominee.
Oh, that's true for best musical
I
actor.
placed my super
Although-
bet on him.
Although we could really debate whether or not he'll actually get 60% of the vote. He still needs to get 60% of the vote.
Is that a law?
But
Is that a law?
let's just assume that he'll get 60%.
Is
Yes,
that a
and we're-
law?
And the
What?
winner is.
Is that a rule that you have
Yeah.
to get 60%?
Yes,
of the
even if you're the sole nominee, the rule is
Oh,
60%
really?
of eligible voters
Oh.
still have to check yes on their ballot.
Wow.
So if 40% of
fascinating.
people feel strongly enough that Aaron doesn't deserve it or they want to make a statement, they can vote no.
That it
I
was-
doubt
Who's
And
best
everybody's
black
saying Adrian Warren for Tina. Why?
She gave the
Why?
best, she gave this amazing performance, just amazing. And I've always liked her. I like her in everything I see her in. I think that, and it's just an incredible. It's not an imitation of Tina Turner, I don't think. And it's her the whole show, unlike Stephanie Block in Cher, who was 1/3 of the shares.
Right.
And I thought she was. It was the minute I saw it, I said, "Wow, she's got the Tony." Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think she deserves a special Tony just for doing that show 8 times a week, or even with 6. But I think she did all 8 shows.
No, I think it was 7. There was a
Sorry.
there was a standby.
But regardless,
Not
I
that
mean,
I'm saying, not that I'm.
regardless, the
Just
amount
an
of,
encore.
I mean, not only the brilliance of the characterization, the singing, the dancing, everything she did, the costumes, but just the energy it took to do that every night. And I happen to be somewhat friendly with her, was just mind blowing.
I loved her in Shuffle Along.
We have a lot of disagreement in the category of best actress in the play. The votes are all over the place.
Really? Okay.
For split between Joaquina, and help me with her last name, the slave play.
Call it Quango, I believe, but don't quote me.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I think
Mary
you're-
Louise Parker in The Sound Inside, and Laura Linney, My Name is Lucy Barton. And I'm not talking about just, in this case, just us pundits on the screen, but I'm talking about all of the Gold Derby pundits. Their votes are split all over the place. And the irony is the one person who's not getting any votes is the person who usually gets all the votes, Audra McDonald. So,
Well, she's got
All right, well,
Let's leave this
since,
seven.
since I know I predicted Mary Louise Parker and I'm willing to say I'm going to vote for her, I will speak on her behalf. I think her work in The Sound Inside which was a very tricky play, a very hard part to pull off. It's a 2-character play, but it's really almost her show, almost entirely. Doing this really what should be in a 99-seat house stuck in Studio 54. I think for all those reasons. And she wasn't, I mean, Mary Louise is the kind of actress who we've seen for years. She's always a little bit Mary Louise Parker, and that didn't change. But I also think she created such a distinctive character that that's the reason I think she deserves it without necessarily taking away from any of the other women in the category. I think it's a very strong category, but that's my feeling.
She was sent to compete against herself in How I Learned to Drive, wasn't she?
Correct. Yes, that didn't work out that way. Which would
Excuse me. Well, I picked Laura Linney. It's a one-woman show, and it was more. I just felt more strongly about her performance, which was to play not just the narrator, the character, but also her mother and several of the other characters. And it was more than a one-woman show. It was a conflict between her and her mother. And I read the novel it was based on, and the play adheres to the novel very closely, and she brought it incredibly to life. And it made, I don't know, closeness to the time of the voting may have something to do with, I don't know if that just goes out the window this time, because it'll be like a year before we vote on, the nominees. But she was a little bit closer. It was January, as I recall.
and I think she may have some sentimental.
Yes.
I mean, I'm, again, I'm very honest with. I've reviewed all these shows. I love Laura Linney.
Mhm.
I hated this show with a passion, and I really actually thought this was the worst work I've ever seen her do. And I wrote that.
Yeah.
So I didn't buy any of this, but I think she was hampered more by her material than this. That said, she is Laura Linney. She had never won a Tony.
Yeah, that's true.
And that may really play into it.
And Mary Louise
Louise
Parker
had one.
does
She
have
doesn't.
one.
I'm surprised, Tom, to be honest, taking nothing away from her for the support for Joaquina, a wonderful actress who I think we'll see more of, but she's a newcomer to this scene. I mean, yeah, she's done work, but
Off Broadway.
off Broadway. This is her first big Broadway role.
Well, Brian, I pictured because for the same reason a lot of you pick Slave Play, because it's of the moment. I didn't like
Right.
the play, but I thought she did a great job.
She did do a great job, so I'm saying nothing against her.
And she's the only one who was not in the off-Broadway production.
Right. Right, they replaced her because actually, whether you guys know this or not, the woman from the off-Broadway production turned it down.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, she had I later found out it's because she had some TV commitment or something, not because it was necessarily the part, which is what I originally thought, but she actually did turn it down. She offered it to everybody from the off-Broadway company.
No.
And it's not like, and look, credit to Jeremy Harris and Robert O'Hara and all those people for not putting a star in that role. I mean, if they'd really worried about selling tickets, they would have found Lupita Nyong'o or,
Well, they didn't sell tickets, did they?
What?
They didn't sell tickets, did they? I mean, the house.
I think they were, well, that's what I'm saying. That was going to be a tough sell no matter how you did
I was
it.
shocked when they
Not
said
put a star in the part made it an even tougher sell.
I was shocked when they said they were going to go to Broadway. I thought, you're never going to, this is not going to run very long. I mean, look out, white people, you're a bunch of racists is kind of not a big selling.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but
Right. But my only other point, going back to what I said, because I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, while Laura may have a sentimental edge, and you might be right, David, more people may have liked the performance than I did. One thing about the Tonys is they're not sentimental. We all know that. I mean,
Sure they are.
it took Peter Rivera 35 years to get her first Tony. There are plenty of people sitting on the shelf with no Tonys.
Yeah, it is not as sentimental as the Oscars have been. That's kind of
Right.
changed.
That's what I'm really trying to say. We often vote as voters, you and I think both, vote for whoever we really believe deserves it. We don't tend to factor in the, poor her, poor him, he doesn't have a Tony.
That does happen more often than with other prizes, like people like Tracy Letts and Virginia Woolf over Tom Hanks in Lucky.
Right, or Bill Irwin and Virginia Woolf over whoever the hell he won that year. I mean, we've had a lot of long shot winners over the years. So, I mean, predicting this is always, that's why nobody ever gets a perfect score, Tom, because predicting this.
We've only had one person in the history of Gold Derby to have a perfect score at the Oscars, and we've had
many times
damn near
champion of this level race. It's still implied, Matt does very well, and you all do, but I mean, really, the many time champion, you still can never figure this out because it's really not like the Oscars or the, in that sense, where sentiment doesn't always play a part and there's so many competing factors. And, we talked briefly about the road factor. I don't know how many road voters saw anything that showed up because a lot of times they come
so theoretically
and they don't see the shows earlier in the year, or even if they come.
If they're honest, then they can't vote.
Can they not vote at all, or can they just not vote in the categories where things are nominated? I'm never sure of that rule.
What's supposed to happen now is you're supposed to fill out that thing and say when you saw the show. And if you do not, if you say I didn't see or you believe it blank, that means you don't get that category.
Okay, so it's just a category.
I tried to fill out late whatever they had sent us, and it was no longer active.
Oh, really? The portal had.
And I haven't received. Did you get a ballot?
No.
Okay.
It's been delayed.
No, we were saying at the beginning, Matt, that David and I got that first.
Yeah. No, I got that too.
And last time I've heard from anybody
until after they made the nominations announcement, and then when I tried to, it looked like it was no longer even active.
Oh.
Okay. That said, I've got another meeting to jump to here, but we can all agree that this show must go on tradition is a real conundrum with the poor Tony Awards this year. We wish them well, and we'll be back to give our support whenever they come back.